Welcome to it. Great to be with you on a draft day Thursday. It's Hail Varsity Radio. We're presented by Currency for all your equipment financing needs. Go Currency. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel. Hope you're doing all right. Carolina Panthers, you are on the clock right now. We'll see what pick that yields. Probably a Bryce Young choice, but time will tell. Numbers to get in today on Hail Varsity Radio, 489-1240, 489-1240, and can find us across the Hail Varsity Radio Network, 1-800-825-5865. As always, email the show, chris@hailvarsity.com, and you're welcome to chime in via the stream. Different ways to watch Hail Varsity Radio. The Hail Varsity YouTube channel, Hail Varsity Radio Twitter. Give that a follow at HVarsity Radio, and KFOR Facebook and Twitter as well. So we will dive into some thoughts on the NFL draft. We'll get into some Husker hopefuls here in just a minute. We are tipping every cap we have in our cap collection to you, the Nebraska fan, you, the Husker volleyball fan, you, the conglomerate that sold out Memorial Stadium in 48 hours. 48 hours to put that 82,900 number up. I salute. That is really incredible. Volleyball aficionado Brandon Vogel with us in about 15 minutes. Get his take on some spring football. Lamar Jackson has agreed the terms with the Ravens. Does that mean anything for Trey Palmer? We'll get into the quarterbacks around the Big Ten. Really good story on the incumbents or some new faces with some teams that needed quarterback upgrades in the Big Ten. Good story in the Hail Varsity issue, the recent issue for that. And in hour two, we'll talk NFL draft. We'll talk spring football. NFL agent Jeremiah Sirles, former Husker standout, will kick off hour two. And what a week it's been in Boulder. And the PR hit that the Buffs have taken or not, depending on your view of things. Gary Barnett going to join us, get his take on some of the projects and projections as well with these first-round projections on quarterback in the NFL. Elijah, what's going on? How are you doing? You look like you're studying for a test or staring at a math problem. God love you, because there are gremlins in the studio. Is that right? Did someone feed something after midnight and spill some water?
Yeah, I got no idea. This is just part of the continued renovations going on with this studio right now. It's an adjustment for me. I was telling you right before the show started, what I've been doing for 4 years of producing this show, and my left hand has now been moved to a right-hand mouse, and what's been going on in my right hand is now my left-handed mouse. So I am.
We're making you go to your right.
Yeah,
you're an uncomfortable basketball player.
It's more the other way around. I can't use a left hand. I've never been I can't bat lefty. I can't throw lefty. I've been a completely weak left-handed player, and now my most important hand here in the studio is the left hand. So I got to work on being a switch hitter. I'm getting there. Bear with me, Schmitty. I think we're on the air, and that's the biggest plus of that's pretty big. The other thing that's nice, and I don't know if Lamar is I know he throws right. I presume he writes or will be able to sign that extension. 5 years, $260 million for Lamar Jackson, the new highest-paid quarterback. Ian Rappaport reporting that. That is music to some ears of Ravens fans and just, quite honestly, NFL fans. So good for Lamar. That is... Schmitty, I believe you've dropped off for us as Schmitty is looking. Schmitty is still unaware that his connection has dropped out. If you see him on the live stream, you see he's still talking. He's looking down at his notes right now. Maybe now he's looking at me. He's realized it as we do some live play-by-play here. Schmitty has no sound coming through. He doesn't know what's going on. He has a confused look on his face. You know what? We'll find a quick workaround here. Schmitty, you can go for it. No, Schmitty still has no sound, which is quite interesting.
Nothing.
You're going to have to sing to me like you're at third base.
Okay, so I, Schmitty, we can hear you. You cannot hear me.
Hear you. So do you have a whiteboard behind you? How fastly can you type? This is incredible. Just get out before the fire spreads to the rest of the studio. You do have a whiteboard. This is good. We'll play charades. What I was going to talk about, and then I'll let you go, and I'll just guess to what you're saying. I am home today doing the show from the kitchen counter because Junior has a baseball game south of town. I'm going to try and not get a speeding ticket to get to. I like this time of year. It's the NFL draft, and you have a host of Huskers here that always get promoted and highlighted when you see the NFL graphic sent out by Nebraskans, by Nebraska. And, of course, you've got Cam Taylor-Britt and Cam Jurgens, both the Cams that went in the second round. You've got Randy Gregory trying on that Cowboys hat. You've got Amir and Rex flanking Cam's Jurgens, Levante David, of course, and a big smile from Sue and Prince as they hold up their jerseys, so many years ago, with being the last two first-round picks for Nebraska. Think about that, 2010 and 2011, as the drought continues. Elijah, I'm all ears. The floor is yours. Hold up the whiteboard. Let me see what it says. But Nebraska, listen, they are going to go try and get NFL talent. They're going to go try and get guys that can be Sunday guys and performers. And that's, it's always been a bit of a byproduct. You go get guys that fit your system that you can develop. Nebraska for a long while would have a good run of offensive linemen that went to the NFL. And Nebraska has not had bad linemen. Reconnect the tie line. Is that okay? Do you want me to do that right now? Are you hearing me at all, or am I electronical right now? Brennan's hearing us on the stream, and this gets to kind of the heart of the issue. That is Garrett Nelson and some of these Husker hopefuls. Do you think Garrett Nelson could have improved his draft stock if he came back, or do you think he would have fit this defense? Great question. I think what Garrett Nelson is dealing with right now is a situation of tape versus time. Okay. You've got the pro day numbers, 4.940, and then you've got oodles of game film that will make him valuable to some NFL team, at least from a free agent standpoint. I'd love it for Garrett Nelson to get drafted. I think he embodies the type of grit and talent you want on your football team. The simple question is this, Elijah, and then I'll reconnect. Is he a guy that can play faster than he is? Guys are able to do that in the NFL. They're able to do that in college. You may be limited with how tall you are, how high you can jump, what's your lateral quickness, what's your burst, what's your speed, what's your strength. Some of those things you can improve. Some of those things you're just stuck with. So can you understand where you're supposed to go and play that much faster? That's important. Guys are able to do that. Garrett Nelson's going to be a guy that will will himself onto at least an extended look via tryout. If he came back, I mean, I don't know that his speed matches with what this defensive identity wants to be, and that is speed. The strength part is going to be important as well. So I just think I applaud Garrett for looking at this thing in the mirror and saying it's time for me to move on, and let me try my crack at the NFL next. So Garrett's a guy that is limited athletically. I say that as a fat mid-40-year-old, so it is not shade. In all honesty, Garrett's going to be able to again will his way into some consideration, but he's he's going to be off some people's free agency board or draft board just based on his time. Is he able to work on or improve in the NFL, getting to the quarterback? Is he going to be able to, as a tweener, hold up against the run in the NFL? I hope so. I really hope so. And I'd like to see some team give him a shot.
Yeah, and this kind of gets to a point we were talking about with Jay Moore earlier this week, where Jay was mentioning the fact that he was a tweener coming into the NFL too, and he had to do whatever it took to find his way onto a roster. At least that's what the coaches wanted from him, and he bounced around to a couple of spots. And Garrett Nelson is a guy that doesn't have the luxury of being one of those uber athletic guys that can be drafted based on upside. Whenever you look at his numbers, both his 40 time, his 3-cone time, what he does in testing wise, and then his film as well. You look at both those things, and neither of them sell you on the fact that this is a guy that can come in and be a contributor on an NFL roster. And that's what you have to be with 53-man rosters. You have to be a contributor in some way, shape, or form. And you talked about the almost 5-second 40. Well, now you look at it, can that really be a special teams guy? Probably not, at least right away. You look at what his film was at Nebraska, and I mean, he didn't set the Big Ten on fire. He wasn't an outstanding Husker football defensively. I mean, he had what it took off the field, was a great leader, was the heart and soul of that defense last year. But in terms of how he played the game, I don't think anyone would describe him as being a game-changing talent defensively. So this is not to take away from what Garrett Nelson's Nebraska career was. I think he's a very important member of the Husker team, but from a draftability standpoint, you look at it, and I don't know where he can come in and contribute on a roster right away. Now, where there is some hope for Garrett Nelson is I think he does still have some upside, and you look at some other Husker players who have come out in the past couple of years, and they get into an NFL strength and conditioning program where they get to develop these guys how they want, and you wonder maybe someone will take a chance on Garrett Nelson, whether it be as a 7th-round guy, an undrafted free agent, and say, you know what, we're going to bring you in. You can be a practice squad guy for a couple of years. We're going to try to turn you into something you aren't right now. I think that is a possibility for Garrett with how do I want to put this? How he plays the game. His off the field, the things that have made Nebraska fans fall in love with him. I think there's an NFL GM or maybe a couple out there that probably appreciate that as well. But whenever you simply look at it with Garrett Nelson, his numbers aren't there, and I'm not sure the film is there for you to say, yeah, this is a guy that can be an NFL guy. So with all of that in mind, Garrett Nelson's going to be a tough one for an NFL team to take a flyer on whenever. I think there's other guys in the draft that, while they might have similar film to Garrett, they have a better physical upside, or while they have the similar numbers to Garrett, they have better college film. Either way, Garrett Nelson's going to be in a tough spot, and I wonder with Garrett whether another year in a Matt Rule strength and conditioning program, because we've seen how different those guys look, especially along the lines of scrimmage this year. I think Garrett Nelson would have fit pretty well into that 3-3-5, and I think you as a Husker fan, your mind will always go there. What would Garrett Nelson have been if you would have come back for another year? But that's neither here nor there. We wish the best to Garrett, and I just don't quite see where he necessarily fits in on an NFL roster, but I'm not an NFL GM. So, Schmidt, I'm not sure. Can you hear us now? Schmidt continues to work as he plugs in a new microphone, and we're going to get rolling here as Hail Varsity Radio rolls through despite technical difficulties. Schmidt broadcasting from the Casa de Schmidt as we get you all set for the NFL draft tonight. We'll talk some Husker volleyball a little bit later as well. Brandon Vogel joins us next segment as we're going to get Brandon's take not only on spring football but also on the NFL draft tonight, as maybe we have a status update here from Schmidt. Schmidt, I think we have you again. Do you have us?
I do. This thing flaked out on me, so many apologies to the listeners. I don't know what's going on, but we're back. We are talking a little bit here on the Husker hopefuls of the NFL draft. We'll get some of Brandon Vogel's thoughts on that as well. Crew chimes in as he was able to touch base. We're just going to make Crew an extension of the afternoon Hail Varsity show. Had a good convo with Garrett this weekend. Great guy. Second-round talent in my book. Crew, God love you. I want Crew to be the next NFL GM somewhere.
Just not with the Broncos, please.
Okay, that's fine. But in all honesty,
we can send Crew to the Chiefs.
We look at Garrett Nelson and we look at Adrian Martinez as two guys that we've covered for a number of years, and we'll see where they end up. We'll talk to Sirles a little bit in hour two about Adrian. He represents Adrian. How about Trey Palmer? because it's kind of been all over the board with him, with where he is projected. He's been a top 100 prospect. I've seen that on ESPN. I've seen that in The Athletic, a third-round guy, a fifth-round guy, a sixth-round guy, maybe a seventh-round guy. There's been some common denominators as far as where he may fit or end up. And Palmer, the fastest wide receiver at the NFL Combine, Baltimore really likes him. O'Shawn Mathis, maybe another Husker you hear from in between that day 3, that 5th through 7th round. And there's some undrafted free agent possibilities with Caleb Tanner. Chancellor Brewington showed some really good speed at Nebraska's Pro Day, so that's impressive. Oliver Martin and Omar Manning as well.
I mean, we can get this at 440. I personally believe Trey Palmer's a day 2 guy. A lot of draft experts, I respect their opinion. I really like him, and maybe we can get that at 440, or maybe with Brandon.
Sure. Brandon Vogel's with us on the way. It's Hail Varsity, presented by Currency.
Well, this is interesting.
How about now?
There it is. Yeah,
better?
we got you.
There we go. It was a glorious setup, but Brandon Vogel is with his junior GM as they are set to slay the draft tonight and get down with it. Vogues, no roadie to Kansas City for you and Junior, but I'm sure you're both fielding calls when it comes to the Husker projections to the NFL draft. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. If you're on the stream, you will see that I am on solo dad duty for the next 3.5 days. So I apologize in advance for any catastrophe that might unfold in the next 10 or 15 minutes.
Well, I did see that the little guy was already going with the baseball sign. He was going 2 hands over the ears briefly, which is a great way to describe how the first 27 minutes of the show has gone today. So, that's right, buddy.
Uh-oh's right.
That, and if he doesn't like what he's seeing on the screen, eventually he will say stop. So that will know we really missed on this segment. So
that's hilarious. That's funny. Vogues, I want to get to your column in the latest Hail Varsity magazine. Really just another awesome issue by you and the crew with that. And it happens now, and that's been a really fun talking point off of a Matt Rule quote about, winning football. And there's been a lot of topics here. I love what you put down about the part of winning, right? That riddle of winning, the way you described it in your column. You've got some great coaches that have solved that riddle, but what makes up the riddle? I want to get that part here. What are some of the pieces that in your mind have been an issue or are potential flips under Rule based on some of his experience, what you've been studying and seeing from the guy?
Yeah, a couple of things. Like it seems like a riddle. I don't know if it really is when you totally boil it down. Like, you've got to be focused on the absolutely smallest details. And I kind of boil it down, and I've done this a handful of times over the years of, like, you got to be good at playing football for the sake of being good at it. And, like, the wins come after that. And, you can look at Tom Osborne era Nebraska. You can look at Bob Devaney era Nebraska. You can look at Bear Bryant or Nick Saban football at Alabama. And I think that's it. Is like, we're going to be good at blocking this guy across from us just because we want to be good at it. And if you don't have that, it doesn't mean you're sunk. Like, you can kind of come and go and rise up the ranks and fall down the ranks, depending on how well you're teaching that. But the only way to do it consistently, in my mind, is to just be good for the sake of being good. And I've gotten that sense from Nebraska football through the spring. And I feel like I don't know if it's been the missing ingredient, but I do feel like it's been missing from Nebraska football for a while.
Now, Brandon, the question that is going to be on our minds throughout the next couple of months and most of Husker Nation and kind of going along with that is Nebraska good at football right now? Because some aspects would lead you to believe yes, and other aspects, namely 8 fumbles in a spring game, would lead you to believe no. So it's a question that I'm not sure is going to be answered until we get to August. But is Nebraska good at football now, or at least better than they were at football as of 5 months ago?
Sorry, you were breaking up a little bit there. I'm hoping you're finished, Elijah.
Yeah.
I would say they're averagely good at football at the moment.
Okay.
That was kind of my impression from the spring game. And, if we're going to boil it down and be totally honest here, like averagely good would be better than where they've been. Because I think at Nebraska right now, averagely good puts you at 6 to 7 wins. And everybody would take that in year one. The spring game was encouraging in some aspects. In other aspects, it also showed me like there's still a ways to go here, which is okay. I think that still represents progress for what this new staff did this spring.
Brandon Vogel's with us. It's Hail Varsity Radio at Brandon L. Vogel on Twitter. And with this football team, there's been some elements that they've not handled well, and there's been some things that they've really invested in. I mean, so the efforts there, the results have not been. I'm anxious to see with this new staff, Vogues, to kind of piggyback off of Elijah's question here. What were you able to, or what do you think Nebraska, I guess, does better as they moved from bad football team or inconsistent football team to maybe some more consistency based on what you saw in the spring and what you've covered this spring? Where did they make some jumps in your opinion?
Yeah, based on the spring game, which was our longest kind of look at this team at this point, I would say, we came into spring football knowing there was on paper, at the podium, in the press conference, however you want to term it, a real desire to run the football. And I thought the running backs ran really hard in that game, which for a spring game, don't take that for granted, I guess, was my point of view. So I think that's a piece of it. I saw some of the aggressiveness we've heard talked about a lot on defense. And, really, if we're operating under the idea that, hey, like, you got to just be good at this because you want to be good at it, for Nebraska to like climb in the ranks, climb from where it has been recently, it's okay if you're good at 2 things instead of the 5, 6, 7 that you probably need to win at the highest level, to win at a level Nebraska has won at before. So can you just be like, can you lock in anything going into these games? Because that's the thing that sticks with me over the past 4 or 5 seasons, 6 seasons really, is you never kind of knew like, well, no matter what happens, Nebraska is going to be able to do this. Can they find those 2 or 3 things right away in 2023 under a new coaching staff? And I would say coming out of the spring, I feel optimistic that they will find them. Will they be enough to win however many games you're hoping the Huskers win this year? To be determined, but it's a starting point.
Now, Brandon, in the Big Ten as a whole, and kind of with what we've heard from Matt Rule thus far this spring, he wants the 2 or 3 things that Nebraska to be good at, to be controlling the lines of scrimmage, running the ball, winning the turnover battle. That seems to be the few things that Nebraska wants. And I guess that last one, winning the turnover battle, is a 2-part. It's protecting the ball on offense and being able to generate turnovers on defense. But is that just what is needed in the Big Ten, or is that the style that Matt Rule brings? I guess, is there a universal couple things that Nebraska needs to be good at in order to succeed in the Big Ten, or can each school do it in their own way? Because we've seen different coaches try different things to be good at Nebraska, and that seems to be the only one that has worked for Nebraska, at least.
Yeah, I think in the Big Ten specifically, the surest path is be able to run the football when you want to run it, which is different than just being like a run first team necessarily. That said, like, you look at kind of what Purdue tries to do, and Ohio State's a unique example because it just trumps everybody in terms of talent. But if you're going to be throw first in this, like, you've got to be really, really excellent at it, I think. So running the football is a piece of it. Defensively, I think it largely comes down in this conference to like not giving up explosive plays. So if you can do those two things at a high level, like if you're going to make those two the pillars of like the foundation of your program, I think you're in a pretty good spot. The turnover piece, in my opinion, comes and goes, though Nebraska has disproved that notion for most of the past decade, really their entire time in the Big Ten. But if they do flip that turnover margin and go way positive one of these years, maybe this year, that's like rocket fuel, I think, for everything they're trying to do.
Few minutes here. Brandon Vogel's with us, Hail Varsity Radio, at Brandon L. Vogel on Twitter. Vogues, before we wrap, and it's awesome to see Junior. I know he's working on getting that. Is he a Will Anderson guy? Is he a Bryce Young guy, or is he going straight for the Palmer jersey?
Sorry, I missed most of your question, Schmidt.
Is he a Palmer guy, a Bryce Young guy, or a Will Anderson guy? What jersey are you going with tonight?
Probably Young. It's tough to remove the Alabama shine off of, I think, most everything, but we'll see. You know, this feels like one of the more interesting drafts in terms of somebody like me who honestly doesn't follow it all that closely outside of like, you know, what do we think's going to happen with the Nebraska guys. But it seems like we're set up for what could be kind of a wild first round.
If you were the Carolina Panthers in the first overall pick, who are you taking at quarterback? That's another question, because Bryce Young seems to be the prevailing opinion. C.J. Stroud has dropped like a rock down draft boards in the past month. Will Levis on the rise. There's a lot of options for the Panthers at first overall. Which quarterback do you like?
I mean, I would probably still be on Stroud. Like, the accuracy with which that guy threw in college, and knowing that all of the spaces get smaller in the NFL, the players get quicker, it gets tougher. Like, that's the thing I would most prize, personally. So I would probably still be on that train.
Vogues, 15 seconds reaction to Memorial Stadium selling out in 48 hours.
Sorry, question broke up. If it was volleyball, unbelievable. Like, I don't think anybody thought that they would realistically sell this thing out, and they did it.
Vogues, you take care. Thank you much for the time. Hail Varsity continues. Back with you. It's Hail Varsity Radio. We're presented by Currency for all your equipment financing needs. Go Currency. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel can dial up 489-1240, 489-1240, or send an email, Chris at hailvarsity.com. The quarterback's a talking point tonight with some of the choices out there with the NFL draft. Carolina on the clock, and we'll get some reaction from the roster flip heard around the college football world by Deion Sanders from Gary Barnett in about 40 minutes. Jeremiah Sirles next hour to talk Husker hopefuls, NFL draft, some of his clients. Sirles could have one of his 7 kids that he signed as their agent hear their name in the first round tonight, John Michael Schmidt. So we'll get there. We have spent a little bit of time on Garrett Nelson as we fought with some gremlins, and somebody fed somebody something in that first segment. So thanks for bearing with us on that. But back to Palmer, Elijah. Let's go there. We got a little snippet of Palmer. We spent some time on Garrett Nelson. What do you foresee Palmer's role as? I look at Stanley Morgan, the previous most successful wideout in Nebraska football statistically. Irving Fryer, the most, because he went number 1 overall in the 84 draft, an option football team putting a wide receiver in the NFL draft as the first pick overall as a return man too. And I look at Stanley Morgan, how he's carved out special teams. Now, listen, Trey Palmer's got elite speed, best speed at the wide receiver spot in this NFL class of wide receivers. I think the edge rushers, I think the tight ends are good in this draft. To be honest, I don't know if I love any of the quarterbacks. I don't think they'll be bad. I don't want any of the kids to be bad, but Will Levis doesn't do it for me. Now, I'll be honest with you. We talked about Patrick Mahomes 6 years ago, and when the Chiefs traded up, and they not only traded up to get a 5-7, 6-6 quarterback from Texas Tech. At first, I'm like, okay, he's a good quarterback, but I was guilty of the system quarterback take, right? Just because you see 100 Texas Tech quarterbacks throw for 1 billion yards and they never stick in the NFL. Not only is Mahomes stuck, I didn't say he'd be bad. I didn't know if he'd be what he is. And Andy Reid saw it. He saw the fit. He saw the mesh with the offense. And then they also replaced the guy that took him to the AFC Championship game in Alex Smith with him. So that's why Andy Reid's incredible. And so is Nick Saban. They're working on 13-3, 12-1 seasons. How do we get better from 12-1, right? They did it. They nailed it. They nailed it with the personnel, the pick, and the fit of the offense. The rest of the quarterbacks, I like Bryce Young. If he's similar to Kyler Murray's height, I think Kyler Murray's a fun quarterback. He's just kind of rubbed his locker room long. I think Bryce Young can be really good in Carolina. Is he going to get broke in half? I look at Jalen Hurts, another Bama quarterback. Those guys are just a little bit different mentally, and that's kind of what you need in the NFL. I think Stroud, to Brandon's point, super accurate. I think anyone who gets him, if they protect him and give him some talent, that's the other thing, Elijah. Half these guys are going to have worse skill guys around them than they've had the last 3 years in college. Mm-hmm. How do they adapt to that in the rigors of the NFL? Well, I don't know if I'm in on Will Levis or not. To be honest with you, I just don't really care. I wouldn't take him ultra high. I like Hendon Hooker. I think that dude's a ball player. I like him better than Levis, and I know it's way different. You can get Hooker in the second round allegedly versus spending a top 10 pick on Levis. Watch Levis ball out and be the next Josh Allen. Well, we'll burn the tape.
I mean, simply put, taking a quarterback in the first round, it's the biggest position to roll the dice on because it's more than just a quarterback's skill level. There's fit with where they're going. How much talent do they have around them? Are they going to be pressed into service early, killing their confidence potentially? That's all an aspect. And you mentioned the whole Patrick Mahomes thing. Patrick Mahomes may not be a Chief if it was Matt Nagy, former Bears coach. Before that, he was the offensive coordinator for the Chiefs. Patrick Mahomes has told the story of the night before he sat down with Andy Reid and in the Chiefs front office. Matt Nagy gave him a call and let him know, hey, here are the plays that they're going to quiz you on tomorrow in that meeting. Study up on them because I like you. I want them to pick you. I want you to be part of my offense. So you might have to thank Matt Nagy for Patrick Mahomes in his career, because if Patrick Mahomes goes elsewhere, does he turn into the Patrick Mahomes we know today? I don't think you can say that with certainty that he does. There's more important things than just arm talent, processing ability of a quarterback. So much goes into having a successful quarterback in the NFL. Who is your head coach? Who is your offensive coordinator? All these things are important that, you know what, it kind of is throwing darts at a dartboard, trying to pick the right quarterback. And I mean, one name that you didn't even mention, Anthony Richardson from Florida. He's got the most arm talent in this draft in terms of his ability to chuck it deep, his arm accuracy, his athleticism. Like, he could be your next Josh Allen. Any of these guys, I would not be surprised if they turn into the next Pro Bowler or if they're out of the league in 2 years, just because of how much of a roll of the dice it is to draft a quarterback. And I say that maybe with a little bit of experience being a Broncos fan, the guys that they've brought in the first round. Mm-hmm. Could those guys have gone off and been successful elsewhere? I think it's very potential. I can't say that with any certainty. And it's a similar story whenever I look at a guy like Trey Palmer. Like, the NFL draft as a whole, it's not completely a roll of the dice. There's GMs that do it better than others, and because they see talent, they see things that you and I as media members can't see, Schmitty. But like with Trey Palmer, it's almost the opposite of what I was talking about with Garrett Nelson, where his film is good in limited circumstances, and his testing numbers are so good that someone's going to take on him a chance on him high. I see him kind of looking like a Hollywood Brown early in his career, where he was that deep threat for the Ravens, couldn't really do all that much over the middle and short, but hey, he was a deep threat early, and they turned him into a better receiver as the years went on. That's Trey Palmer. He's put it on film. He's a great deep threat. You can see it based on his testing numbers. He's going to be a great deep threat in the NFL. We don't know how he's going to handle press coverage. We don't know how he's going to handle going over the middle against NFL safeties and linebackers. All those kind of remain to be seen, but he's got that ability to go deep, and NFL teams love that right now. So I see Trey Palmer being a guy that can be second or third round, but I think he's a similar story of, you know what, he could be very successful if he goes to the right fit, but if he goes to a team that doesn't fit him very well, he struggles in enough things, particularly what we've seen in film in Nebraska, as I said, press coverage. He doesn't have a full route tree developed right now. He might not be successful based on where he goes, and it's similar with all the quarterbacks in the first round right now.
Well, you mentioned press coverage, and the thing that's going to keep folks from maybe pulling the trigger on Palmer is the Illinois game, where Devin Witherspoon, maybe the first Big Ten player off the board tonight at 6, he absolutely brutalized Palmer and whoever else is trying to catch football against Nebraska. Another one of Lovie Smith's specials, right, where he gets some beast in that back four that is uber talented, and Witherspoon, one of many Big Ten names, along with Stroud and Paris Johnson, that you'll hear. Real quick on Anthony Richardson. He was too good, and he had too much talent around him to be as bad as they were at Florida this year. But that sheer athleticism, he'll end up in the first round. Maybe Seattle grabs him as a project if he falls where he's projected to fall. We'll wind down hour one next on Hail Varsity.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
One final time, Hail Varsity Radio. Jeremiah Sirles to talk NFL Draft, Husker spring game. As Sirles was on the call with BTN, Larry Putney. We'll get Sirles' take, and hoping for Jeremiah and his fellas that they have a very good experience the next 3 days with the NFL Draft. You probably know some Chiefs fans that are heading down to Kansas City, kind of thought about it, decided not to. I know that's enemy territory for you, Elijah, being a Donkeys fan, but man, that'd be really cool to go experience the draft down there, and it is an absolute spectacle. So Sirles with us next segment. And then Gary Barnett from Colorado will join us. His take on some of the quarterbacks he's seen, but also the week of prime. You went from the peak of the mountain to, oh, wow, ESPN is diverged on the city of Boulder to showcase Buff football to everybody's running. Instead of we coming, we going.
We running. We ain't coming, we running.
Yeah, we running. Reminder with your friends from Dyer Law when it comes to workers' comp, and this is in no way or shape or form associated with Colorado football for workers' comp. But if you're confused about the option of your workers' compensation claim, put your trust in the team from Dyer Law to help ensure that your rights are protected and you get that settlement you deserve. Call Dyer Law today. Give that team a ring at 402-393-7529 to, well, get protected and get your rights backed by the incredible team at Dyer Law. Dyer.law to chat with trusted professionals about your workers' compensation claim. That's Dyer.law, Dyer.law, 402-393-7529. 2-9. No, this time of year is a lot of fun. I think there's Elijah. There is a lot of trepidation and worry by the big brains in the NFL with this NFL draft.
Well, there's some anonymous front office personnel that are out there telling, like some of the draft experts, yeah, we consider it a bad first round when there's 15 to 20 guys that we have first round grades on. And some of these NFL front offices only have 10 to 15 first round grades on some of these guys. So once you get outside the top 10, it is going to be a free-for-all, wild, wild west type where there's some guys that some NFL teams, you know what? Hey, if he's there at the end of the first round, we're going to take him. Another team's going to say, man, we wouldn't touch that guy with a 10-foot pole till the fourth round rolls around. It's going to be one of those drafts where you have wildly different draft grades on guys. There's no real consensus on who the top players in this draft are outside of maybe the top 10. Going to be one of those drafts. And if you are down in Kansas City watching the draft this year, if you happen to be lucky enough to be down there enjoying that, may I recommend right across the street from Union Station, it's up on the hill, the World War I Museum, one of the best museums you will ever see in the Midwest. I think I've been 5 or 6 times in my lifetime. You won't regret it. I think tickets are like $20 or something like that. It's the only national museum not housed in Washington, D.C., the World War I Museum. It is absolutely incredible in Kansas City, and it's just a stone's throw from where they're hosting the NFL draft. So I do recommend that highly if you're down in Kansas City right now.
Pretty awesome for a lot of NFL fans in the Midwest to get down there and enjoy it. We'll have some reaction to the first round tomorrow. Jeremiah Sirles is going to be with us. Keep saying that, but I mean it. He is going to have some pretty good takes and a unique perspective and experience with what he's been doing post-football career for him, a little broadcasting for sure, and a lot of representation. Reminder to you to get buckled up today. Do so and make sure you buckle up. Keep your hands and eyes straight ahead. The driver has one job to drive. A message from the Nebraska Department of Highway Safety Office.
The voice of Husker Nation is on the air. This is Hail Varsity Radio. Insight, opinion, expertise, along with the biggest names talking Nebraska sports. Join in with the show at 402-489-1240 or 1-800-825-5865. Now, here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt and Elijah Herbel.
It's NFL Draft Night. It's Hail Varsity Radio. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, and standout Husker and NFL performer and NFL representative Jeremiah Sirles with us at Sirles71_HSKR. Dude, I send the invoice. You are talking to us on just in front of draft night. How are you?
Stressed to say the least. Hopefully it's a big night for us. We have John Michael Schmitz, the center out of Minnesota, who has a good chance of getting his name called tonight. If not tonight, then absolutely tomorrow. So we'll just be monitoring as things go. For coach speak, the hay's in the barn. Now it's just the hurry up and wait game, and I was talking to John Michael last night, talking about like, hey man, you're done making decisions. Now you just get to kind of wait and see. And then we have him and then Evan Hall, the running back from Northwestern. Hopefully he'll hear his name called on Saturday. And then a couple other guys, Adrian Martinez has a chance to get his name called later. If not, I know that all 7 of our guys are hopefully going to have a home come end of Saturday, which is what, as an agent, is what you want. You just want guys to have a place, to have an opportunity to go out and do their thing.
Sirles, when it comes to representing a player, tell me a little bit about making that connection. I know that you're a name that folks remember in Nebraska, but you're also a name in several different NFL communities, Minnesota being one of them, and that's where John Michael played his college ball, did a great job for the Gophers, a lot of wins with him starting at center. What's your, I don't want to ask the secret ingredients, but how do you go about it? You and I and Elijah, we've done stuff for a lot of years together, but when it comes to the agent part of things, your background and experience, your road to the NFL is super valuable.
Yeah, I'll give you a little bit of a peek behind the curtain here, some of the secret sauce. A lot of it for us, and so Zach Zenner is my partner. He played running back for South Dakota State, and then he played for the Lions for 5 years. And so we have a blend of then our other partner, Chris Giddings, who has been an agent for 25 years, who also represented Zach and myself. We have this unique blend of experience with the gray hair and Chris, and then we have 2 young guys that were just fresh out of the league, And, the pitch is pretty easy. Hey, I've been where you want to go, and I know how to get there, and I can help you avoid the things that will get you off the path. And, we take a different approach of it from an agency of so many agencies are about like your brand and your profile and your website and your merch line and blah, 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 blue. Like no one gives a rat's if you don't play in between the white lines. Like you can have the coolest website ever, but if you don't play, who cares? So we take a very football-related approach to it of like, hey, we're here to make you better football players. We're here to prepare you the best that when you walk in there, you're going to have 5-man, 6-man, 7-man protections. You're going to have those down if you're an O-lineman. You're going to know every run concept. You're going to have all those things so that when you show up, you're rookie ready. Because the odds of you having a career, Chris and Elijah, when you get on the field as a rookie, skyrocket. Not just playing in the NFL, but actually having a career. So our whole goal from the step forward is, hey, we're going to get you on the field as rookies. It's what Zach did. It's what I did. And we ended up having 6 years and 5-year careers.
Jeremiah Sirles with us here at Hail Varsity Radio. And Sirles, whenever you're looking at this Nebraska rebuild, before we get into a couple of your guys specifically, what do you think that the development plan should be, especially along the lines of scrimmage for this Husker football program in order to get looks from the NFL draft? I mean, we've talked about this offensive line and their lack of mobility a lot over the past 6 months. We've talked about the defensive line and their struggles as well. So especially along the lines of scrimmage, but I guess anywhere on the football field, what should that development look like at Nebraska in order to get scouts looking at Nebraska football players?
Yeah, the development starts from within. I think the transfer portal is great. I think we need some help in the transfer portal. I think we need a couple depth pieces of O-line, a couple depth pieces of D-line. But ultimately, you build programs from the inside out. You develop guys that showed up to your campus. I saw a picture circulating around of Trevor Penning and Cody Mock, who played for North Dakota State, one played for Northern Iowa, that showed up on campus, and they both were like 225 pounds. And now one got drafted in the first round last year at 330, and one's going to get drafted in probably day 2 or day 3 this year of being an O-line developer. You have to do that at Nebraska. You have to understand, like, yes, we're going to go get the big 5-star recruits. We're going to recruit the 4-star guys, but we're going to build our program on 3-star offensive linemen from a 500-mile radius around here, and we're going to develop them from within, make them strong, make them mobile, build them and craft them to what fits our offense and what fits our scheme best, which then allows them to have the best individualized success, right? Then you're going to get looks at from the NFL. Then you're going to get all those things looks, but you can't just keep plugging and playing guys, especially on the offensive line, and expect to have longevity success there.
Jeremiah Sirles with us. Sirles, from high school to Nebraska, you redshirted. You had good size. I'm not quite remembering what you came in at, but with your own development, and I know Coach Garrison, Coach Cotton were there for you, and I'm excited with Coach down at Nebraska now with Raiola and kind of his mentality. I think he'll do some good things as well, but you played early. How much of that was you coming in ready? How much of that was you developing in that redshirt year? How much development did you need?
Yeah, it was kind of, I attribute a lot of it to James Dobson, the strength and conditioning coach, right? Just like I think Corey Campbell is going to be the heartbeat of this football team. The strength and conditioning coach is the unsung hero of every single football team from high school to college to the NFL. It's the strength coaches. They spend majority of the time with the kids. They spend day-to-day FaceTime with the kids, and they're the ones that are developing them from a physical and mental maturity standpoint. So, I got in with Dobson's program right away, pushed like hell in it, and then I had a little bit of luck. Mike Smith got in front of me. He got dinged. He got hurt, so I got to take the whole spring, and I performed. So a lot of it is developing physically, but also when you get your opportunity, whether it's in college or the NFL, you have to take the most and make the most out of that and show that you can play at that high level as well. So I do think I wasn't quite physically ready to dominate and contribute a lot as a young player. I was good enough to go out there and hold my own in a position that we had some issues with, but it really wasn't until my second year, my redshirt sophomore year, that I felt like, okay, I'm not just keeping my head above water anymore. I'm actually contributing and I'm helping. Then that next year is when I felt like I could dominate someone. And that's when I was the second team All Big Ten and all the way through. So, it's in progression, but sometimes you got to get out there and just get thrown in the fire and see what happens. But physically, you have to be ready to hold up against these guys.
Sirles, what did you think of the performance of Gunnar Gatula on Saturday? He was the guy that I liked running with the second unit. I was impressed. A guy that should be going to a senior prom and I guess has gone to a senior prom, but now is playing football at Nebraska. I liked what I saw from him, but I wanted to get your take on him.
Yeah, no, I loved him. I thought that he moved really well. I thought that he showed some really good strength at the point of attack. But, he's a guy that he needs to add about probably 10 to 15 pounds, I would say. But, I loved his athletic ability. Technically, he looked pretty clean for a 18-year-old. But I think that he's a guy that has an extremely high ceiling. He's a guy that I'd like to see not have to play this year. I think we could get by with him if we in a pinch, but he's a guy I'd like to see live in that weight room, be in the developmental group, right? I don't want him to necessarily be in the two deep where he has to play and he's not lifting that third day in case he does have to play, right? Like having him a full year in the development group would be leaps and bounds for him, and then hopefully give him a chance to contribute in his second year.
Sirles, thought on the spring game overall. Elijah touched on Gatula. Let's start with the offensive line. First, how was TV with Mr. Larry?
TV was fun. Larry Putney was awesome. I'll tell you this, a regular game would be 1,000 times easier to call than a spring game because you don't have to memorize 105 names and have guys switching teams on you halfway through. But, other than that, it was a blast. I had a great time with it. It was super fun, and I hope to do some more of it. But, I also have to learn I can't just watch the lines of scrimmage from up in the box because people want to understand what's going on the back end, too, even though no one cares about receivers and DBs.
It's all about the linemen.
It's all about the linemen, obviously. But, no, it was a lot of fun.
Good.
For what it's worth, Sirles, I loved all the insight in the offensive line. That's why I watched the spring game.
Oh, I appreciate it. I mean, it's hard not to pay 5 DBs when you got them all out in the field running around, so you got to pay attention to those guys.
Yeah, sure you do, but you'll get there. Jeremiah Sirles with us. Offensively, overall, we've made a lot all week about the fumbles and turnovers, but there was some bright spots with Sims, the running game, the O-line. Give me an overall grade, at least in that snapshot that the rest of the country got to see.
Yeah, first thing I thought that they looked well in protection. I thought that they looked well. Last year we had a lot of free runners. Last year we had a lot of guys that got beat quickly at the line of scrimmage. I thought that the edges looked pretty clean. I thought that run game-wise we got to see a taste of what this run game is going to be. We had guys pulling. We had guys going in motion. Some misdirection, but really inside run was a big piece of what we had, and guys were running off the ball. So I thought having Nuri back was a big help. I thought he played really well. Having Ben Hart, he took some steps. I can't wait till we get Teddy Prohaska back and then see where maybe we stick Turner Corcoran. We have some pieces now that guys all have a lot of experience playing. I'll tell you the guy that I'm most excited about on this offense in general is Billy Kemp. Mm-hmm. I think Billy Kemp's going to be a guy that's going to be Cole Beasley-esque for us. He can do a lot of things in the slot as a returner, and you can see the yards after catch potential with him too.
Defensively, what did you see from the 3-3-5 that impressed you? I know you mentioned on the broadcast you were worried what happens whenever the first line of defense is broken with a run blitz. So that's obviously going to be one of your concerns. But what did you like and what were you concerned by with the 3-3-5?
Yeah, I liked the chaos and the confusion that it does bring. You saw the different blitzes. You saw the ability of having to keep in the backfield because we're sending extra blitzes, which is, again, you blitz the back to keep them out of the route concept. And also I like the fact that you could see different guys lining up at different positions, right? At one point you have Jamari Butler is rushing through the B gap. The next time he's dropping and covering in the hook curl, right? So you see the mass confusion, but you have to have DBs that are willing to come up there and be absolute dogs in the box. And we have some of those guys. Miles Farmer, I think, is a guy that could do it. You got to have the guy, Isaac Gifford's kind of that little rover role. But I'm just the inner alignment in me is just like 5 DBs on the field. I'm looking at the head coach going, we got to run this ball 100 times, right? Make these dudes tackle. And I think that that's a point of emphasis where Coach Rule and even Tony White's like, if you can't tackle, you can't play defense for me. Right, it's really that simple. So, I liked what it can bring. I like that he compared it to the option offense of, hey, if I have to practice against the option offense, it makes my week of practice hell if I'm a defensive coordinator. Well, if we're running a 3-3-5, no one in the Big Ten really runs it, so it's going to make their week of practice even that much more confusing with the installs, let alone just getting reps in. So I like the philosophy behind it. I think it's going to be a bit of a feast or famine at the beginning, TFL, and then, again, run blitzes, one crease. It can go 60-70 if you miss a tackle. So I think there are going to be some growing pains with it, but overall I was pretty impressed by Tony White's plan.
Sirles, some of the young guys on defense, Princewell, Noonan, Lenhart, just to name a few. You got some guys that have been in the program as well that got to show up and do some time and really get some penetration. Do those guys look different to you than maybe some of the past kids that have been in Nebraska?
Yeah, I mean, the fact that they're having an impact so young is great. I think Princewell, I'm not even going to try his last name.
It's Princewell.
Yeah, Princewell. I think he's going to be a really good player for us on the outside. I like to see the evolution of guys like Jamari Butler from what he's taken steps for. I like to also look at that defense and go, okay, we're going to add back Luke Reimer. We're going to add back Nick Henrich. We're going to add back Ty Robinson. So you're going to add back some of your guys that are studs. And then if you can have some of these dudes that can come in and make it so that those guys don't have to play 60 snaps a game, like they can play 40. I'm talking about the D-line specifically. It just makes you guys fresher in the fourth quarter, which is where we saw some of our collapses this year because our defense was playing 80 plays a game, right? So that'll be a little different. I'm excited for the freedom that this defense plays with, the pace at which they played, the tempo at which they played. I think you're going to see a lot more plays being made just based off of that, but there's also just going to go a lot of trust in that, knowing that, hey, I got to make sure my guys are where I need them to be.
Sirles, very open-ended question here before we get to a couple of your draft guys. Your biggest concern coming out of the spring game is what?
The fact, I think my biggest concern is probably just the lack of depth on defensive line, and the lack of size. We don't have a lot of just true, really big bodies in there. And then the other thing would be depth at wide receiver position. You have Marcus Washington and Billy Kemp and Xavier Betts, but then who? Right? Alante Brown's now gone. You have a good tight end room, but you need some more guys on the edge. You want to have 6 to 7 receivers that you can trust that can go out and produce on offense, but also play well on special teams. So those are kind of my main concerns going forward, and then obviously the ball security issues.
Sirles, we got this email earlier in the week. We chatted about it. Your take, Dylan wrote in and was excited to have Solich back. He's a longtime Nebraska fan. Has a question here. My question, when do we give Bo forgiveness? Some of us haven't been mad at Bo. Liked what he did here, been very vocal about that for years. That said, could you see a day where your coach, Coach Bo, comes back?
I hope he's not as old as Frank Solich when he has to come back, but I would like for him to come back. I think the hard part, and again, this is just my opinion. I feel he feels like the fans kind of ran him out of town. I know that there was that, but I think that's Coach Bo. If you ever got a chance to meet him, can hold a grudge with the best of them. So I think that there's a little bit more time that needs to heal that wound before he may ever be able to come back.
Ever have a grudge against old Sirles on the line?
No, of course not. You kidding me? I like my life.
Jeremiah Sirles is with us here. It's Hail Varsity Radio. And Sirles, before we get you out of here, John Michael Schmitz, tell me about him. He's a guy who tonight could be a first-round guy, could drop back to the second round. From an agent's point of view, what's the difference there? And from a player's point of view, what's the difference between being a guy who's at the back end of the first round as opposed to a second-round or third-round guy?
Yeah, the center's an interesting position because it's becoming a little bit devalued in the NFL, but it's also one of those things where you're seeing it start to rise. The Creed Humphreys, the Creed Humphreys of the world, the kid from Iowa, Linderbaum last year. You're starting to see the young centers that are having a lot of success being a position of value. The difference between center and, say, a tackle, right? If you're the top 3 tackles, there's no team in the NFL that doesn't want you. Everyone's looking for their next best tackle. The center position is very niche, right? There's one on the field. You usually like to get one guy that's your 10-year guy, and then he stays. So you're seeing it where Linderbaum, number 1 center last year, went 25th or 24th overall. 2 years ago, Creed Humphrey, number 1 center, went in the last pick of the second. So there's this wide range. Either way, if you're getting drafted in the first or the second, you're expected to become a day 1 starter. John Michael is by far the number 1 center in this class. Number 2 is probably Joe Tippmann out of Wisconsin. So either one of those guys are going to be nice, but I think John Michael has a chance to be a 10-year starter in this league, and that's what they're going to get when they get him.
How many guys end up playing center versus coming in at a different position? Are they a backup center in college, or do they play guard and also kind of freelance? I mean, you when you were with Minnesota, you played all 3 spots, man. Yep. That's why I'm asking.
Yeah, a lot of times if you draft a true center, that's because, like I said, you want your 10-year guy that's going to be in your middle. But if you have kind of that swing versatility, like a Steve Avila from TCU, played guard this year, played center last year, he's a guy you can plug and play at all 3. Those guys are really valuable too. A guy like Alex Forsyth out of Oregon. Those kind of guys are what you can do. But there's always this kind of assumption like, oh, if he can play guard, he can play center. Not always true. Same with, if he plays center, he can play guard. You see it Lander Dickerson with Philly. He played center for Alabama. He's a great guard for the Eagles now. You're always kind of rolling the dice when it comes to those. But I think that for that inside positional flex, you're looking for first, second round guys that you have a plan for where you're going to put them and where they're going to start.
Jeremiah Sirles. Sirles, have a great weekend with the NFL Draft. You and your clients. Great stuff with the spring game, and we'll get caught up again. Thanks for a few minutes.
Absolutely, guys. Appreciate you. Go Big Red.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Back to you. It's Hail Varsity Radio. We're presented by Currency. Hall of Fame coach with Colorado, Gary Barnett, back with us. Also Northwestern, also the Missouri Hall of Fame. And, Coach, did you get the shovel out last Saturday? Did you help clear that field in Boulder?
No, but I was way up in the press box watching them clean it. And that grounds crew had to clean a soccer field for a scrimmage at 8 o'clock, a lacrosse field at 10 o'clock, and then the stadium, and they started about 10:30. And they only had one crew to do all that. And so they were clearing the field, shoveling, getting all the snow out with a big front loader to have it ready for the kickoff and ESPN. And you know what? They had a little bit of ice and snow in one end, and other than that, it was pretty good. And then as the day went on, it got nice. And so it was an amazing crowd. Chris, we had 47,277 people, and that's more people in our stadium than we've had in the last 9 games, not combined, but not one game had that many people in it in the last 9 games at home. So it was quite a dedication by the fans in Boulder and Colorado.
Well, I kind of like Coach Prime's cowboy hat. Have you ever rocked a cowboy hat?
I think I gotta have something to drink before I do that. But we have a little bull riding deal down here in Cave Creek on Friday nights, and sometimes when we got guests in town, we'll go down there, and I have a National Rodeo jacket, big leather jacket that's probably about $400 that somebody gave me, and I've got a black hat that when you play at Texas for the first time, they make you a hat and a Stetson. So I've got that. So every once in a while, I'll break it out.
Well, because Coach had the kind of the chocolate felt cowboy hat, and then he had the white one, man, like No Country for Old Men, and he can pull it off, and he looked cool, and man, there was some excitement, but the PR this week has been not great for some, and those that are close to it, so be it. Coach Prime said it's, I'm bringing Louie with me. So what's your take, Coach Barnett, on the week that's been after the spring showcase with all the departures?
Chris, he said he was going to do that. And, when he did, many people cringed at the meeting, and many others, like myself, said, he's got to do this. That's why we're bringing him in. And that is, he had to create a whole new culture. And it needed to be done fast. The difference between Deion Sanders and anybody else we would have hired, nobody else could have pulled this off the way he's pulling it off. And, in 1 year, we are flipping an entire roster. I think we have 13 players left from last year's team. He's flipping an entire roster. Nobody else that was out there, one, would have the guts to do it or would have the mental framework to do it. But he's done it. And if that's what we needed and what we wanted, then that's what we're getting. But with that comes some uncomfortable nights and feelings and everything else that goes with it. And in my case, I've been calling plays these kids' games for, every one of them since they've been there. And you get to know them a little bit. You get to You get to talk about them. You know things about their personal life that you can talk about on a broadcast, and you meet their parents, at these games. You ride, I fly in a couple places with parents, and so you get to know them. And now when this happens, you feel for the kids, you feel for the parents. And then you look at it, you go in and put your business hat on, you go, this is what has to happen. So it's, it's a tough deal. There's no good way to do it. It's like a coach leaving the school and going to another. There's just no good way to do it. And people are going to think the way they want to think and the way they feel, and that's fine. And it's just the way it is, but it's going to happen fast at Colorado. I noticed this morning he's already put 2 guys into the portal that he brought in. two of the transfers are already in the portal going out. So, he's cutting and slashing.
Well, the hashtag We Comin' on social media when Dion got here, some of the departing Buffs, hashtag We Leavin' has been what's been going on social media. So I got a kick out of that the last 24 hours. Gary Barnett's with us here on Hail Varsity Radio. Coach, I don't disagree with you, and you've been around it, and folks that are around Colorado athletics know that 1-11 isn't what is acceptable, and you were part of the rise and the build that went from 1 win, 2 win, 0 wins to pulling off a national championship. So you've seen the build, you know how and what it has to be in college football. Is it how it's being done versus what's being done that maybe folks could be taken wrong, or at least not what's said, but how it's being said, that type of parallel?
A little bit, but if you would just look through the history, Bill McCartney, it took him 4 years to have a winning year. It took him 10 years to win a national championship, and they almost fired us when we were 1-10. And so people took more time. While it was important, it wasn't nearly as important as it seems to be now. And it wasn't nearly the business. And you couldn't flip your roster. If you make a mistake in recruiting, you live with that mistake. And now everything happens fast. You don't have to live with that mistake. You can trade him to somebody else. It's just completely different. And I think that, I don't know. I think older folks like myself look at it and say it's pretty harsh, and I'm glad I'm not in it right now. Younger folks, and especially people on the business side, look at it and go, it's what you have to do. And so if you're going to pay players, and if you're going to give them the right to transfer anytime they want, then guess what? This is what you're going to get with it. And, we're all being led down this lane by people who are think they're trying to help all the players. They think they're trying to get them all they deserve to have, and it's changing everything. And we have to live with it or stop it, one or the other. Gary Barnett with us, Hail Varsity Radio. Coach, are things speeding up with Colorado and the Big 12? Any insight on where that is? I saw Dion's comment earlier in the week about not being able to keep kids in the Pac-12, and I know the athletic department came out with a statement, and we all think the Big 12 is inevitable for the Buffs again. Well, I think it is too. I can't give any hard, fast evidence of that other than, first of all, you got a coach that doesn't want to recruit California. He doesn't want any California kids. He wants to go south, and he wants to go to Texas, and so you got a coach that's clamoring and who's got a much bigger podium and bully pulpit than anybody else at the university. So I would imagine that point's being pounded every single day. And I don't think our athletic director or our president or chancellor, I think they probably agree that it's time for us to make a move. I mean, the money you leave on the table right now looks like it's huge. And in this time of college sports, you can't do that. You can't leave it on the table. So, it's I think it's inevitable, but that's just gut feeling, Chris. I don't have any particulars I can give you on it.
Coach, are you confident Colorado's going to be able to get a offensive and defensive line and to that point from the portal? When we look at the kids that are departing, how much of it was misses on the trail, lack of development, or just a fit issue with what's there now versus the past staff and past recruitment? I ask that because I think there's some good players that are gone from the roster.
There are some good players, a couple in particular that could play most places. But I think you wait and see where all these guys that go in the portal go. That'll tell you a lot. If they can play, somebody will find a place for them, at the same level. If they cannot play at this level, deemed by film study and everything else, then you'll see them drop down. And I think that's going to be indicative of what exactly is going on and maybe some of our problems. I think that it's never one thing; it's a combination. I think we under recruited, we settled in recruiting a lot of times. Development with a number of coaching changes that have occurred at Colorado. I don't know how you develop a kid. So, it's a combination of all that stuff, but it's very difficult to develop a kid if he's got 5 different line coaches in 5 years or 3 different in 3 years. It doesn't match up. So now you've got to have them almost ready to play, and to have a kid that's a late developer, I don't know. To me, somebody is going to pick up those kids and get something out of it. I think your lower levels are going to really benefit from this. And so when I say lower levels, the group of 5,
sure.
The 1AAs, even the Division II teams, I think are going to really benefit from this.
It's Gary Barnett with us here. Hail Varsity Radio rolls through on a Thursday as we've been dealing with a gamut of technical difficulties here in studio on this Thursday edition. And I want to take a moment to thank our wonderful engineer, Eric, for coming through and helping us out with some stuff. It's Elijah Herbel taking you through this segment as Schmidt unsure what's going on with technical difficulties. Hopefully we'll hear from him next segment as Gary Barnett continues with us here next segment, as Gary was kind enough to give us a little bit of time and deal with all of our technical issues today. Again, if the technical difficulties impacted your listening of this show at all, we encourage you to check us out in podcast form where there are no technical difficulties. You can check us out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, as well as Google Play, Amazon Music as well, where you can find us, or the Hail Varsity YouTube page, another place to check us out. Check us out on Twitter as well, at HVarsity Radio is where you can find us, and we'll get you a link to the podcast there every single day as well. We have more with Gary Barnett coming your way after the break. It's Hail Varsity Radio, presented by Currency.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Gary Barnett, couple more minutes with us, Hail Varsity Radio. Coach, how did you get guys that were run-first quarterbacks to be comfortable in the passing game? I ask that because Nebraska's quarterbacks beyond their perceived top 2 here after spring are guys that are still, works in progress, and that's okay. But their strength is running the football, and you can get away with doing that, and you can use it and win some games doing it, but eventually you're going to have to make some throws. And I remember your offenses at Colorado, you guys were incredible with the option game, but it always felt like Hagan would have 1 or 2 big-time passes up his sleeve to really, stress a defense. Tell me your approach to a guy that may be best at running, but, man, there's going to be a game you got to throw it to win it.
Well, what happens when you have a running quarterback and you run him and he's effective at running and he's part of your offense and he's part of your production in the running game and you plan on it, then if you're on the other side, you've got to defend it. And what that means is you've got to put an extra guy in the box. So when you do want to throw it, you've got one-on-one coverage. I mean, when we were the wishbone, let me tell you, our wide receiver had one-on-one coverage every time. You can't get better than that. That's as good as it gets. So, you know, that's one of the things that Hagan put so much pressure on an offense that you had to sink 8, maybe 9 guys down in there to account for him. And then he pulls it back and throws it. And he's just got to be good enough to get the ball down the field. And, you know, that's when you need the great player that'll make the great catch. And those are hard to keep in an option offense. You know, if they're only going to get the ball 2 or 3 times a game, it's hard to keep those guys. So, you know, that's the biggest thing you run into is with a running quarterback is keeping receivers happy. And, you know, we ended up playing sometimes with just guys we converted to receivers who wanted to play. And, but the important people were our quarterbacks, our fullbacks, and our tailbacks.
Did you see the tribute to Coach Solich at all on BTN, the halftime, or Nebraska ran 44 ISO or a fullback trap, first play of the game with the spring game, and then Coach Rule gave Solich the game ball to start things off?
You know, I didn't see that. I didn't get a chance to see it yet. I haven't gone through all that stuff from the weekend. So, but that's cool. I'm happy for Coach Solich.
NFL draft gets going tonight. Have you gone to the draft for any of your players, Coach?
I have not. My son, when he was working for the Eagles and the Patriots, was at the draft, but I have not gone for any of my players, no.
Well,
I haven't had any in the top 10 or top 15 that I can think of.
I think you had Graham, didn't you?
Dan Graham, yeah. I had Dan Graham was in there, and then a couple other guys. Tyler Brayton was in there. You know, a bunch of second-rounders, and just a handful of first-rounders.
Gary Barnett with us. Coach, let's talk draft here, and we've hit on some of the debate with Bryce Young or Stroud, but overall, what do you think of the quarterback class with Young, with Stroud, Will Levis? I mean, there's just some, and then Anthony Richardson. Those are the 4. Do you think Richardson and Levis are guys that, I mean, who knows, right? Depends where they go, but do you think they've got the ability to be good pros?
I have a big question mark on Richardson and Levis, and really I have it on Bryce Young too. I think if these quarterbacks came out in the class of all those great quarterbacks that came out over the years, I mean, you know, there were 2 or 3 years where there's just 4 or 5 great quarterbacks. I don't know if these guys would be mentioned other than Stroud. And so, but you need quarterbacks so badly, and the whole football world at every level now revolves around the quarterback. So you're willing to throw money and see if you can get the guy. I mean, you got to throw enough darts. Eventually you'll hit one. And you know, you look at the teams that don't have one, and they're not playing well. So that's the number one position. And so these guys, they become more and more valuable, and there aren't a lot of them this year in this class. And I think Stroud's the best of them. But there's always a sleeper in there someplace. But I think he's the best.
Well, the Big Ten is going to have a monster first round between Vaness and of course, Skoronski. And the first guy that could go is Stroud. But even Witherspoon at Illinois, you are familiar with Skoronski at tackle. Does he have a comp for you? Does he remind you of anybody either you've coached or you've seen in the NFL? Could he be one of the greats?
You know, he plays with such leverage, and he bends his knees so well, and he's strong, and he's 6'4". He's not 6'7", 6'8". So he's automatically got leverage on guys. I watched him every snap of the Nebraska game, as a matter of fact, and a couple other games, and I was really impressed with him. I had a kid named Matt O'Dwyer at Northwestern that was much like him, the same kind of size and strength, who was a second-round draft choice and played for a long time. But he reminds me of him a little bit. But, this guy can pass run, he can pass protect, he can run, run block. He looks very good to me. I mean, he looks solid.
Gary Barnett with his coach. We'll let you get out. Golf plans this weekend. How many rounds?
Oh man, I'm helping guys with groups they've got coming down. So I'll get to see 2 today, 2 tomorrow, probably 1 on Saturday, 2 on Sunday, and 1 on Monday. How's that sound?
Ooh, that's good. I may sneak out Saturday, working on that. So, Coach, appreciate you much. You have a good weekend and enjoy your time, all right?
Thanks, Chris. Good being with you.
Good to have Gary Barnett with us here. His usual Thursday spot, Hail Varsity Radio, rolls forward on a Thursday as it's the last we'll hear from Schmitty this show, as we've been dealing with technical difficulties all show long as we've laid out for you. We do apologize for those working on them. We give a special shout out to our engineer Eric, who's been working tirelessly to get things figured out as we've gone through a bit of a transition here in the former ESPN production suite, now the production suite for Hail Varsity Radio, as well as the local KFOR morning show, The Morning Hookup, all produced in here. We've been going through a bit of a facelift for the studio, and that facelift leading to some technical difficulties. We hope to have them resolved soon, so we thank you for bearing with us here as this Thursday show rolls on. We've got plenty to get into, as we've already heard from Brandon Vogel back in the first hour, and that is already up in podcast form. You can check it out wherever you get podcasts. We also had Jeremiah Sirles joining to lead off here in hour 1, and then we just heard from longtime coach Colorado and Northwestern Gary Barnett joined us here this hour as well. All of that will be up in podcast format shortly. The one area we haven't spent as much time on as we would have liked to, and I'm sure we'll get into this a little bit tomorrow as well, as Bill Dolman will join us for the Friday edition. We can get into it. Volleyball Day in Nebraska. It's sold out. Husker fans setting some records less than 48 hours after tickets have gone on sale. It is considered a sellout. We're going to get into that. We're going to get some thoughts from both John Cook and Trev Alberts. That's coming your way after the break. It's Hail Varsity Radio. We're presented by Currency.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
One last time here on a Thursday edition. It's Hail Varsity Radio presented by Currency. Elijah Herbel taking you through here the final segment of this show as we finally get into Volleyball Day in Nebraska. A huge day, not only for the Nebraska women's volleyball team, but women's sports in general. As Nebraska, a chance at setting the record for the highest attendance at a women's sporting event of all time. That is following the news that was announced earlier today. Nebraska has sold out the volleyball event in Memorial Stadium later this fall that features UNK taking on Wayne State, as well as Nebraska taking on UNO. If you've been living under a rock, that is your update for you. As for Trev Alberts and John Cook, they are absolutely overjoyed by this news, as they should be. It's going to be a huge event down at Memorial Stadium here in August. And here's what Trev Alberts had to say as he announced the sellout crowd, and he thanks the fans for their support of Husker volleyball and what an awesome event they're going to be putting on down at Memorial Stadium.
We're about 4 months out now from Volleyball Day in Nebraska. It's going to be just a special day. And John and I just really need to say thank you. We've had over 82,000 people buy tickets to Volleyball Day in Nebraska. This place is going to be sold out.
And over 82,000, the specific number, 82,400 seats have been sold thus far, and that does not include indoor club level seating as well as the field level seating, which will be available to UNL students. So that is going to be pushing 90,000, a full sellout for volleyball event in Nebraska. More from Trev Alberts here, saying that they are working on providing more seating to get everyone in the doors that they can.
There was such intense demand that our team did the very best they could to sort of keep up with that demand and continuing opening up new spots. And I want you to know that as we go through here, we still have more demand. I've asked our team, Coach, to do everything they possibly can. Let's look at every possible area we can open up. Let's bring as many fans in as we can get. I mean, this has blown us away, but we're going to do everything we can to allow anybody who wants to be a part of this special day be a part of it.
special day is absolutely right with what is going down at Memorial Stadium. It's going to be awesome. John Cook echoing the sentiment of Trev Albert, saying he was just as surprised as anyone that Nebraska sold this event out so quickly.
Well, right now we're all having an out-of-body experience because this just, it's overwhelming to see what's happened the last 2 days. And I never really believed, as you know, I was doubtful, but when President Carter got up there and said, we're selling this thing out, I started believing then. And, you just start thinking it, and now it's happening. And I just seen the reactions been incredible.
As for the Husker volleyball players, John Cook saying they're fired up, whether it be rain, snow, or shine for the event coming up in August.
Our players are going to be so pumped up with 80,000 in here, it won't matter what the heck's going on.
So I need to get my media pass in order because, like many Husker fans, unable to secure myself some tickets yesterday. So hopefully in the athletic department hooks one Elijah Herbel up with a press pass for that event. Crossing my fingers here in the studio. If you're watching on stream, you can see that. That'll do it for us here on a Thursday edition of Hail Varsity Radio. If you missed anything from the show, check it out podcast form wherever you like to get your podcasts, or check out the full video on YouTube as you can watch me and Schmitty losing our minds over the technical difficulties we faced today. We hope to have those cleaned up by tomorrow. We'll talk to you from 4 to 6, as we'll have Jacob Badillo joining us talking Hunter Salas picking Wake Forest. We'll have Brady Oltmans as well, and we'll get Bill Dolman's take on volleyball day in Nebraska. That's all coming your way on a Friday edition. It's Hail Varsity Radio presented by Currency. Talk to you tomorrow at 4.